Call to order this workshop for the Highway 412 meeting update for the Siloam Springs Board of Directors. Don Clark.
Good evening. Thank you guys for giving me a little bit of your time for me to bring you up to speed on kind of where we are with the Highway 412 meeting project. So what I'm going to do is first kind of give you a little bit of overview, kind of the historic facts of kind of what got us to the point we are at today, and then our plans to proceed from here. So as a reminder, it was the Board of Directors' goal for the year of 2017-2018 to come up with a plan. The exact wording was develop a plan for replacing Highway 412 median grass with new landscaping, trees, shrubs, flower beds, and decorative hardscapes. I would also tell you that for staff, we were interested in that as well because we maintain it. A lot of people are not aware that being on the state highway system, after the median was done, the city agreed to maintain that for the simple fact that if it was left up to the state, they would only come through and mow 3 times a year. So we agreed to maintain that grass belt, if you will. So that's why we maintain it. If anybody questioning it, it's the state highway, but we agreed to maintain it. So after we got this board go, staff started to meet with certified arborists and master gardeners to develop a plan. I'll tell you, we worked with Patty Irwin, who's a certified arborist, and we also worked with Don Denton. They both have been very instrumental into providing us with feedback and input into this project. So in May of 2018, we obtained conditional approval from the Arkansas Department of Transportation for tree planting on the highway in the new, along with the list of trees that they would not include. Those reasons for them not approved, they're invasive species, or they had concerns about the roots and the growth of the trees and the longevity of the trees in the median. If we could, the goal would be whatever we plant, something that we can prune in the proper way that doesn't hang out over the in the roadway, as well as can grow up instead of growing out. So we obtained that in May of 2018. In October of 2018, staff presented a conceptual plan to the board. At that time, we talked about the potential trees that we could do, along with some of the other shrubs and grasses that could be planted in the median as well. And we also stated at that meeting, after a little bit of feedback from the board after the workshop, that we would pursue grants to try to help with the cost of this endeavor. So in February of 2019, the board accepted a grant from the Walton Family Foundation for $263,000 to go towards this project, to be utilized to purchase trees and anything we thought we would need as it relates to vegetation in the median. In July of 2019, we also applied for a grant from the Arkansas Forestry Commission. We did not receive that grant, but it wasn't for a lack of not trying. We tried, to obtain money from the Arkansas Forestry Commission, but we did not obtain that grant. So starting in October of 2019, we started working to prepare this project to go out to bid. Our approach from day one was to do a design bid, process, which we would design and then put it out to bid and receive bids. In November of 2019, we kind of held a pre-bid meeting with potential bidders and started to realize that the design bid process was going to be a challenge. One, because it was going to be very hard for us to kind of control the cost, because some of the contractors who were interested in it, they just did hardscape. They were not going to be landscape architects, so they were unsure what type of subs they would bring in to do the planning. And then the irrigation system also, because we had planned irrigation in this project, so that irrigation system also brought some problems as far as if we were going to do it and try to do the entire span of the project, how did that relate to the coordination of utilities along with the permit to close the highway, so on and so forth. So at that point in time, we kind of took a step back and decided to pursue the construction manager at risk route. If you recall, we've done a number of projects, CM at risk. We built the library, CM at risk. We also built Memorial Park via the construction manager at risk process. And we also renovated community development through that process. So we wanted to go that route because what we knew is that they would be responsible for coordinating all the subs and utilities and obtaining the highway permit, as well as we knew we would probably get a guaranteed maximum price, right? So we wanted to pursue that, and we started into that process. In December of 2019, we engaged a firm to scope the project working with them in April of 2020, we received a bid breakdown from the firm that estimated the cost in their estimate and having their guys who do this work to be well over $1 million. So that was honestly, we had seen some models in our own work that we thought could be anywhere between $1.3 to $900,000. So this told us that this is probably accurate, that we needed to take a step back and look at it a little bit deeper. And so, also in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, if you recall, there were a number of projects that we had paused on. This was one of them that we decided to pause and wait to see how we were going to be on the financial side of things before we tried to pursue further. So in June of 2020, we started to meet and look at ways to for a value analysis or value engineer the project to get the cost down. So we threw out a number of, we worked with Patty Irwin and Don Denton to bring them into the conversation of what can we do to try to take some of the cost out of this, but still have a manageable project at the end and a more doable project and something that we can maintain. So one of the things we looked at was phasing the project and bid each section separately, and then also reducing the number of trees in that process as well, and removing irrigation were things that we looked at. So, the thought was if we phased it, we could break it up over a number of years, and then we could manage it instead of having to bring in a construction manager at risk into the equation, which, their fees would increase that. So we tried to scope it down a little bit more so where we could control the price. So one of those things that we needed to do is because we did get a grant from the Walton Family Foundation. They have grant assurances, so we wanted to meet with them to see if the monies could be spent over multiple years. That's what we approached them with. Like, we really want to pursue this project to take it to our board, but we need to look at maybe phasing this project over a 3 or 4 year period to make it more palatable and more attainable, fiscally. So in January of this year, we received confirmation from the Walton Family Foundation that the grant could be extended over a certain number of years. So what you're going to see is kind of what, I'll take you to where we were with the design and bring you to where we are currently with the design, and then let you know the cost where we are sitting currently. So if you recall, the original design, we had irrigation, as I said earlier. A lot of the irrigation, early on we talked about, could we just, so with the trees, we knew once they matured, we really didn't have the need to water them anymore. But if you recall, we had also had a number of different other plants in the median that kind of weed through those types of plants, either that it would be native vegetation, would need some type of drought protection over time. So that's why the irrigation was in there. So the other part of it too was the, if you recall, I'll show you here in just a second. Probably be a better picture here. But in these areas, the nose of the median was going to be that hard brick skate, the herringbone pattern to kind of match what we have downtown in our stamped concrete. And then also, if you look at the beginning, we use this here in circle, that this was the area where you saw a number of different bushes, and then the tree, and then the different grasses and plants that was going to weed through the project. Well, we look to remove that as well, because with that came the need for a weed barrier, so we wouldn't be out there trying to pull weeds all the time and increasing our maintenance, and also the rubber mulch to reduce maintenance, because we were trying to figure out what type of mulch could we use in the median that wouldn't spill out and get all over the place and become a hazard, and rubber mulch was one we decided to try to pursue at the time. So that was the original design with the 3-foot wide dyed stamped concrete border on each side, as well as the irrigation and the weed barrier with the rubber mulch and the little loose stem grasses moving through. So after we took a look at it and started to do a value analysis or value engineering, whichever one you want to use, we decided to really, let's look at removing the irrigation. The cost of the irrigation was going to be about 15% of the original cost. We looked to remove that. We also looked to remove the mulch and the decorative grasses to be planted in the median at that point in time. That was also something that we had kind of wrestled with these little blue stem grasses or decorative grasses. Loved the idea, but at the time internally, I think we were struggle with that a little bit for safety aspect. If somebody was to try to cross the median, would they surprise somebody popping out of these grasses or whatever? So we decided to pull that, and then we also reduced the concrete board by a foot. So now it's only going to be in our current plan is only going to be 2 foot die stand concrete on the board on either side of the median. So to kind of, if you look at it now, you still will have the hardscape at the nose of the median, if you will. And then I believe what we have planned is that concrete will run at least until we have a minimum of 2 foot in width. So it'll be at least up to about 6 foot in span. So I'll just kind of take that and draw it here into this area here. And then we kept in some of those bushes to just kind of help with the aesthetic of it. So those are, I believe they're Carissa holly shrubs is what they are. Very low maintenance, very, from what we're told, you know, can survive in our climate, can survive in an environment without a lot of maintenance. So we decided to leave those in as well. The other thing that we did is we kind of wanted to spread the trees out a little bit. So on average, they're about 50 feet apart. And if you recall, when we came to you earlier, we talked about mixing the species of trees, and that was recommended by both the arborist and the master gardener. Or if there was some reason one species of trees became susceptible to a disease, it didn't just spread across. You know, maybe got to one and there was a lot of separation before the other same species was close. So our plan now is to, as I said before, phase the project over 3 years. So what we talked to the Walden Family Foundation about and are discussing with you is spreading over 3 years. So 2022, 23, and 24. The costs are there associated with what we think that would be for each one of those phases. Still money, but significantly a lot less than the 1.1 we were looking at. And I would probably be remiss to say that with some of that, with the way material prices are going up, that was probably going to be a little bit higher than that when we actually got it to bid, honestly. So we split it up into 3 sections. So State Line Road to Dogwood is what we were planning to do in 22, Dogwood to Elm Street in 23, and then Elm Street to Washington Street in 24. And, you know, that just kind of gives you an area view of kind of what that section looks like that we would want to do first. So again, this is phase 1. This is phase 2, Dogwood to Elm Street. And this is phase 3, the last phase. So ultimately, what it boils down to is that we are sitting now with a design that we estimate the cost about $657,000, with the city's cost being $394,000 after the grant. So, you know, this would come back to you again during the budget seasons when we would probably prepare that. So it will come to you in each subsequent year for the budgets, for it to be budgeted, for the project to be done, as well as we would then bid it. So that bid would be a public bid that we would bring back to you for you to approve that contract should you see fit. So hopefully I didn't run through that too fast, but that's where we sit today from where we started with the original board goal. And of course I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Board, do we have any questions for Don?
Don, on the 3-year breakdown, it says that does not include the grant, but it does. Is that correct?
Our cost, well, with everything, so yeah, you're right. These numbers are our numbers. So the cost with the grant is a little confusing. I get it the way we put it. That's why I put it here so that first phase we will look to be $261,000 total. Our cost with a portion of the grant as well. And then the next phase would be, I believe, about 203. Same with our cost with a portion of that grant. And then the last year would be 193,000 with our cost, including the grant. So our numbers will look, that's what our impact will be.
Okay. Also, have you looked at other ways of doing the points or the ends of the medians, is this the cheapest way to go?
Honestly, yes. So
Okay.
kind of what the goal is, and if you look whenever you're sitting there at the nose of those intersections, they kind of catch a lot of that trash. So our goal was to, and then that is really where it becomes a lot of handwork for us to maintain. So you don't have anybody on the mower anymore; they're doing handwork right up against the curb.
Mm-hmm.
So we really wanted to kind of put something there. One of the things we considered early on was just ground cover, right? Some type of grass, but we also know that we would have to maintain it. You know, there were a couple ideas of planting decorative flowers in that section, but for the same purposes, we're trying to lower our amount of time having to be out on the median to maintain it. We decided that hardscape would probably be the most efficient way over time to maintain it.
I started looking at these when we were driving around, and there's some over at Rogers that have the larger stones on the point, and they don't have a lot of trees on theirs, and it looks really good. So I don't know how that, how much that costs them, but
Well, and so again, if it was our street, we probably have a little bit more of a leeway, but ArDOT is very specific in what they
Mhm.
will and won't allow. Anything that they think would potentially create a or get into the clear zone or create more of a
Mhm.
conflict if there was an accident, they're probably going to something flat to the ground is what we would have to, had to go with.
Mhm.
Because of the speed on 412, I believe the speed limit is rated a little bit higher. That's for us to get the permit and get approval, we'll have to, adhere to their requirements.
how many trees are we going to be buying?
There are a total of 74 trees.
Wow.
And a total of 36 of those Carissa hollies that I spoke to you about. That would be like right at the beginning before the trees are planted. So 74 total trees. Reduced quite a bit. I believe the number, top of my head, I don't have it, but I know it's a lot more than 74 trees.
Vice Mayor, or did I just talk to Dawn? You on here you said that you applied for a grant with the Arkansas Forest Commission. Did you apply for one for the Arbor Day? Sometimes, or do you have to be a tree city to do that?
Oh, wow, wow.
Oh dear.
You're lucky you went first. I was about to go off.
That, Phil has talked to me recently about that. I can't remember what year it was. We looked into it and we were a little bit hesitant because of the cost per capita. Did we really meet that, or would we actually, by becoming a tree city, be increasing our budget by having to try to hit that cost per capita? But I think, and we'll come back to you with a report. I think we're close with the tree giveaways we do, as well as with the maintenance that electric does. That will count as well. Any maintenance that you do, maintaining the tree, pruning the tree, not only electric but also harvest. So we'll try to compile that information, see how we sit, and come back to you and tell you how close we are to that.
Can you, for clarification, say what the requirements are to become a tree city? Do you know?
I think, well, one of it is, you have to pass you have to ratify, but the financial part of it is, I think it's $2 per capita. You have to show that you spend it on an annual basis.
The plan is for Don to be back here in 2 weeks with a report to the board on the requirements and where we are as far as meeting it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was counted by canopy or, do you see what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah, no, it's strictly that $2 per capita. So whatever our calculation is, you have to show that you're spending that annually
On what?
on trees. So it would be either planting trees or maintaining trees.
Okay.
That's why we know that electric, for them trimming the trees because of their power lines, that would count towards our cost of building. So we're thinking,
Trimming the trees
yes,
would count?
Mhm.
To me, that's like, I can't believe they allow that, but that's all right.
Don, how many trees did you say?
In this current plan will be
Yes.
74.
And they are all the same?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
What are they?
So there'll be kingpin willow oak is what that was one of the trees we showed you. Again, we were trying to find trees that would grow more upwards and not outwards, and things that we can maintain and keep that canopy as well. And then 30 present ginkgo trees, the correct ginkgos. We want to make
Yes.
the stinky ones that drop fruit everywhere. Because of the color and again, because of the, the longevity of these trees in that such environment. And then the last one, we had originally, I believe, looked at the Creole Queen elm, but after we looked into it a little bit more, we found that was going to be maybe tougher for us to source when we get to the project, depending on that one has a more temperamental growing season, so we would have to try to target. So we decided, not knowing when we would be able to go, we wanted to get a tree we can get from a nursery and source it a lot quicker. So I think we changed over to the Espresso Kentucky coffee tree. Again, these were approved by ArDOT, was on the list that we could plant, and then again from the arborist and the master gardener kind of met their approval as well.
I'm curious, what's their average height at maturity? Do we know that?
I believe when in 2018 when I showed you that slide, I could quote.
I can't remember it either.
But that was again something too that we knew, they weren't going to get to be, 50 feet tall.
These aren't going to be trees like we did down on Main Street where we have to take them out after many years.
When honestly, it wasn't too long after we had just replaced the trees on Broadway that we realized that we had a lot more understanding of what trees needed to do, as well as the structural soil and how you needed to plant them so the roots grow down and not out. So a lot of that was sourced into this material when we were looking at what type of trees we wanted to plant, as well as why I think ArDOT said here are trees you can, here are trees you cannot because of that as well.
I do like the brick edge or the stamped concrete edge so that our employees are not right there on the edge of the highway. I mean, that was the whole purpose, I think, of doing this over.
Well, because without the border, it requires some handwork because you can mow it pretty tight, but after a while, we all maintain our yards. You got to edge through there, and so we're trying to reduce the amount of handwork and the amount of time that we're on the median. And then again, when you're mowing now, your mower wheel is not sitting right up on the edge of the curb, to where you can get house-centered or slip off. Now you kind of got that 2-foot room to work to kind of work within and not be in that same predicament.
So we're going to leave the grass that's there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
So we aren't reducing the number of times that we have to mow, but just the areas.
We think we can.
Do you?
We think there's ways. We've talked to a number of people that are pretty knowledgeable about grass and certain things that we can maybe grow to, we've been hesitant of treating the grass out there because of, everything that's there. But if we treat it in a certain way, we could probably reduce the number of times we have to mow it, and then we're actually cutting grass, not weeds. So we can get a better height, so we're actually reducing our time being spent on the median over time. Because now instead of being out there every week, we can maybe go to once, every 3 weeks or something to that nature. So we're looking at that as well.
And because we're taking away the irrigation, we're not going to see guys out there with big barrels of water and a hose squirting these, okay?
Right, so what will probably happen in the beginning is, we will, in the plan, when we bring it back to you, when we go out for bid, we'll ask for a certain caliper. Again, we'll rely on the experts of saying what size caliper tree do we need to, put into the bid specs. And then our plan is to come back with gator bags. Now, it would take time for us to water those gator bags, but then we can leave them and step back, because the alternative to that will be a water truck. And we did the math and the time, and you're talking about somebody going through there with a water truck. Justin, you remember how long, we did the math? Yeah, I had to bring the engineers in because that was the type of math that needed to be done because I couldn't do it on my own. But it would take us literally like 3 days to try to water all.
What's a gator bag, Don?
Oh, okay, sorry. A gator bag is a bag that goes around the tree, probably from the base up a little bit, and you fill it with water, and it naturally goes out over time. We use them in other areas, so we're familiar with them, and we were trying to, and then on the other side too, there's not anything that you need to worry about freezing or breaking either. Just thinking about what happened a few months ago, most everything that broke were irrigation lines. Man, what a mess that would have created on 412.
Mm-hmm.
That was another reason why we felt pretty good about let's take that out.
Don, I would really like to see us pursue the Tree City along with getting this done, because we're going to be spending that much money anyway.
Yeah, and they're probably opens up, if we are Tree City, probably opens us up if you trim it, we actually have their staff come in and train us on how to properly trim trees, which is what makes us eligible. Now, if we were just out there trimming them on our own, then we probably wouldn't, but we have, an individual who comes in and who trains us on how to properly prune and trim trees so we don't damage them or make them susceptible to disease.
Don, I was not on the original, or I was not on the board when you all came up with this as a goal back in 2017, but I was on some early discussions, I think, with just how we were going to bring in some of the landscaping and arborist professionals about it. So I'm very supportive of the idea. One quick question. Was the mulch that you decided not to go with, was that going to replace the grass, or was there always going to be grass there?
Well, we were going to replace the grass.
Because I thought part of the reason for doing this was to keep from having to send mowers out in the median.
It was to reduce our time, and we think with this current plan we will. We still would have had to go back out there because of those.
But it wasn't just reducing time; it was kind of the safety issue too, right? As little as we can put our employees out in the middle of the highway, the better. Okay. Well, and so I'm all for cutting costs as much as we can. I know this is an expensive project. I do think it's going to really help the look of the entrance and all along, sort of the main drag of Siloam. So that's why I'm very supportive of the idea. The professionals that we do have working with us on this, do they feel comfortable that this is going to be a look that will be a good look for us? I mean, because we're skimping a little bit, we're cutting back, but are we still getting what we need?
I believe so.
Okay.
Spacing the trees out 50 as they mature and we get the canopy. We'll enjoy the aesthetics of it, and I think we will also enjoy potential traffic calming, because studies have shown when people there's nothing, no barrier, they speed a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, what we would like to see is over time, as these things kind of mature and grow, people just kind of naturally slow down, because, if I'm on that inside lane, I feel a little bit more closed in because there's something vertical there versus just open.
Yeah.
So,
I guess the main question I would just still have is if one of the reasons why we were doing this was to keep from having to do as much maintenance there, and then we pull out one of the things that was going to help us to keep from as much maintenance, is that something we need to reconsider? I'm just throwing that out there.
I mean, we could, but, honestly, I kind of see that as one of those things that will probably push the cost back up.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because we would have to dig out the grade or what's there and try to put down the weed barrier, and then put in the rubber mulch with the grasses. And the understanding now with Memorial Park with those grasses, we still would be out there cutting those back because we wouldn't want them to get certain height. So
Okay.
in talking to the staff and having been out there and observed when they mow, I wanted to make sure I kind of got a feel for it that we still close off that inside lane. So now you have that inside lane closed off, and they're only operating in the middle of this median instead of being right up on the edge. So it gives them a little bit better feeling that you got a little bit more room for error, honestly. Meaning when I say error, if somebody's head down texting, they hit a cone, hit the median, mount the median before they get to you, whereas if you're mowing right up on the edge, it's into you first. So that's kind of what our thought was, honestly.
Don, do we not mow with the mower that's on the boom arm?
No, ma'am, we actually mow that with our flat mower, zero turn, commercial mowers.
And we couldn't mow it with that? Be a lot safer.
Are really what you call rough cuts. They don't do finish mowing.
Manicured
Yeah,
lawns.
So we
Right.
could, but those mowers, they also throw a lot of debris because they're flail mowers.
RTO.
And so as it is, we coordinate, and we usually have the street sweeper to come out kind of right behind us and get it out. So there's not a lot there right now. Other ways of mowing it could probably increase that a little bit. One being a boom mower.
Director Burns.
I'd like to yield my time to Vice Mayor. He's been chomping at the bit over there.
Now, I'd like to cede this to Director Burns so he can say his piece.
I'd like to cede mine to Director Allen. Hey, a couple of things. Floral and fauna. And so, today I was on Tyson Parkway, which is just a great way to skip some stuff. And to me, that's, and having, driven the corridor area, these observations. So a couple of things, you know, we can reduce even what we're doing now, but as we implement this plan, I presently, you know, I'm getting familiar with herbicides and when to spray them and that time of year, and then quit cutting the grass all the time. Good Lord, you know, I remember on the board, I made the fight to reduce our height of grass, and you know, that 9-inch or whatever that barrier is now, because you know I was OCD with grass. But now I've learned to mow higher, and it actually chokes out those weeds. So I really see, as we implement this, from a safety standpoint, if we follow some of the basic practice guidelines out there, you can greatly you're talking mowing, you know, 4 maybe 5 times a year. But this whole concept of mowing it down just invites that invasive. And no matter what we do on this project, it's not going to be super popular with the few folks in town. That's just the way that project is. We knew that when we started working on this. I think by reducing some of those things that we just talked about, makes it more appealing to a few folks out there, even though it's a significant cost. I think phasing in is a great idea. I would caution, I'm not concerned who the expert is, but if you don't plant your trees in the proper time of the year, you're going to wake up in the summer with a full-blown nightmare. And I think I've spoken to this before. I'm a massive believer in the city spending a little bit extra money on caliper trees, because number one, I don't have to wait till I'm on my deathbed to see the potential of that tree. But more importantly, it gives the tree a better chance. The tree giveaway is one thing where we take, you know, that tree and we sit at home and nurture it because, you know, we have time. But on projects like this, I've got money up front, and I think that's the direction you're headed. And I appreciate you coming back and looking at it and cutting some of those costs down, and it seems a little bit more realistic. My last plug is I'm okay with rubber stamp brick out on the corridor, but I am not a fan of it downtown. That's all.
You mean the pattern
Yeah, it
died and died?
I know we had to do it on the bridge for weight.
Yep.
But on the crosswalks, I think raised a little bit gives a safety aspect and that rippling effect. And much like a tree, it slows people down. So that's just future projects as we look at the comprehensive plan, and if we're in that area, it's worth it to go that. But out there, it makes total sense. Thank you.
Don, in terms of what Mindy was talking about, the safety, how wide is a median total? Is it 16 feet, it looked like? I think the 12-foot is what you have now, but then you add the 2 foot on each side. I think one of the diagrams had 12 for the grass after you're done, and then add, it looked like it was 12 in the middle, and then, or no, 10 foot. Well, that's the original.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
the next one, the amended one has 12, and then with 2 on each side. Oh, no, wait, that says 4. Okay.
But from memory, Director, I think it is 16, just as it is today.
Is it 16?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's what I was gonna explain, is that by cutting it down to 2 on each side, you still have quite a bit of area for your safety of your worker, in terms of mowing. If we did it all, mulch, you're still gonna have somebody come and weed. I mean, they're gonna have to be down on their hands and knees weeding, because the mulch just doesn't, I mean, it looks great, but
I like the concrete barrier.
what I was gonna tell you is, when this first came up, I was on the board, Carol was on the board, and you probably remember when the state came here, and they were gonna do solid concrete. I mean, just the whole way, solid concrete, and we wanted them to have something that we could do. Of course, our board, when we voted it, had no idea they were gonna plant 111 one-way signs down the middle. They didn't clue us in ahead of time. 111 of them, I counted them. Yeah, and the state crews that did it stayed in a hotel over in Oklahoma, if you could believe that. The thing I was gonna ask is, can we not reapply to the Forestry Commission since you're gonna push this down for, like, in phases, that maybe you can hit them again?
Absolutely. Their grants are, they're not robust, but they're.
Any little bit helps.
So, absolutely,
Yeah.
we will, once we know, because I think also what helps us is that if you approve it and put it in the budget, we can say we got a shovel-ready project to put this
Right.
money towards, so I think it helps our school.
Well, and you've got it all laid out to show them what you're already planning, so,
Definitely, they
yeah,
know we have
yeah,
it, yes.
yeah. I hope you can, put that in the works as well. Thank you, Don.
Anything else?
On the one-way signs, we did ask about that, and they have to stay.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, they're.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah, wherever you drive to, right, they have to be there, so, you know, we thought maybe we catch the right guy, and he said, yeah, take a look.
All right.
Director Sappington, one of your earlier questions was about a way to reduce the cost. And really and truly, based on this plan, the only real way to reduce that cost by some, I don't know, Justin might know a number, 10%, 15%, is not to have dyed and stamped concrete, have plain gray, flat concrete, which in our view is not the look that you should want to do. It's a little bit more money, but at least, and Director Burns, I would agree with you, the stamped and dyed concrete may not be the best in all areas, but in that area, at least it gives it a little bit of decorative design, especially on those areas where it's going to be all concrete, where the median gets really narrow. But having that stamped design and that colored concrete there will at least set that off a little bit more. I don't know the difference in price, but that's the only other thing when we looked at it as a, you know, the only other way to reduce the cost any further and still have a valid project. And we didn't think that we should cut that out because of the decorative look that the design, the stamped and dyed concrete will give the city.
Not that much more money. It's worth the, plus it kind of ties downtown in
Yes,
with.
yeah, trying to match that design, yes.
Our 412 is our, you know, people think we're putting money into downtown. I mean, downtown is, I mean, it's been here. It's our downtown. But there is a vibrant activity on 412, and whether you make it downtown or not, it's our signature. And you know, the flags along the medium there, or on the side, and the American Legion, you know, changing those out, and we sponsor that. Those are all, it doesn't seem like much, but if you roll into towns that, you know, don't have that, you can't talk about it. There is a huge, significant difference, and it's a great impact for businesses, even though we're still annoyed by that divider on some occasions when you want to go certain areas, but we're learning to live with it.
When those flags came down because they had to be replaced and they took them all down long ago, we got letters from people that traveled through town saying, where'd the flag? I mean, they were tourists that just went back and forth, but they loved the fact that our city honored our country that way. It was a big deal. It still is a big deal, I should say.
I was at a conference, and there was a gentleman there from Louisiana, and he asked where I was from, and I told him, and that was his recollection
Mhm.
of his time being here, was the flags on the highway. And today, we're currently the #1 non-interstate port entry into the state of Arkansas.
Mhm.
We're pushing for #2 at some point, but, you know, we're #3 behind I-30 and I-40. So we're right there in the amount of vehicle traffic, so it is, a lot of people see it, and we think that, when this is done, it should help us that clean. And, you know, in talking last night with the comprehensive plan advisory committee meeting, that small town feel, sometimes it's not numbers, it's just that feel of community. Nothing says that better than how you maintain and where your pride is. And I think that people come in, see those flags, and then hopefully once this is done and matured, it just speaks to, how we love our town and what our DNA is.
Dawn, my only concern was because of it blocking a view was coming off the bypass, then turning left onto Washington Street. I was afraid that the trees would block where you could see the oncoming traffic. And that was the only place that I realized that there might be some.
The traffic is higher up right there, yeah.
Right,
I
but
can
the
see what you're
tree,
talking
you know, will be blocking the, and so,
You talking about so last
the railroad,
Right
the
in front of the two
overpass.
dealerships you're
Yeah,
talking
right
about.
there at Superior.
yeah, so
If you were coming
I was, it's,
down the,
it's probably not, I mean, I apologize if it's not, and I tried to blow it up when I was here playing with it earlier, but it doesn't just, but if you notice, so here's the turnaround here, in the turn, is that what you're talking about? The
Mhm.
first trees are not to the back of this point, so we took that into consideration, made sure you had,
mhm,
there was not a visual obstruction and nothing in that line of sight triangle where somebody needed to see to be able to make that turn, so that's where the project would start on that,
That seems far enough back for
Yeah,
the
it-
first tree to start.
I think so, and that was my only concern on the whole strip of anything blocking the view was just coming down.
Anything else? All right, that will conclude this workshop. We will be back at 6:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Call to order the Siloam Springs Board of Directors meeting for May 18, 2021. Roll call.
Dappington,
Here.
Smiley,
Here,
Burns,
Here.
Hunt,
Here,
Rissler,
Here.
Allen,
Here.
Carroll.
Here. You would please let's stand for the prayer and stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
please bow your head. Dear Heavenly Father, we are thankful for this day and the many blessings that you have given Siloam Springs. We are thankful for the opportunity to come together and serve the residents of this community. We ask us that you guide and direct us in the decisions we will be making tonight, and we ask that you protect our community, our nation, and all those who serve and protect us wherever they may be. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I would ask that you silence all your phones. We're to the point of public input. Public may address the Board of Directors regarding any item on the consent agenda or any city business not listed on the board's regular agenda. Is there anyone that would wish to do so? All right, if you would please give us your name, address, and we have 3 minutes for you.
My name is Rex Harris. I live here in town at 2521 Orchard Hill in Siloam. I'm here with several other members of the community that own and operate Airbnbs, short-term rentals, VRBOs, and we all recently received a notice from the city about tax remittance for a 2% sales tax, 2% local, 1% county, and 6.5% state, for a total of 11.5% tax that the city apparently is not receiving. So we've all met and we've all talked with Airbnb trying to figure this out. And the recent update that we've got from Airbnb is they state that they are in a voluntary collection agreement with Siloam Springs, that they'll be filing one tax return for all of the owners. So we just need some clarification on what y'all are getting from Airbnb and VRBO and what's going to be expected of us.
Okay.
So I can tell y'all currently that they do collect an 11.5% tax, which is the total that we were told that needed to be collected. There's been some talk of a 13.5% tax, but honestly, we're not getting really clear answers on what is expected of us. There's also the question of if there's the same issue with VRBO, which we haven't gotten a clear answer on. So I guess our big things are how much tax should be remitted, how much tax is being remitted from those companies, and if there is an issue with VRBO. There's also been, in the subsequent pages on this, that we all received requests for a special use license, special business license, inspections by the fire marshal, kind of a lot of things that as local mom and pop places would be pretty difficult for us to do and pretty cost prohibitive for us to operate. All of us that are here tonight, we own our properties. We have one property. My kids clean my property. It's something that I use to teach my kids work ethic. It's not a big moneymaker for me. If this were to go through, we would not be continuing to offer that service. And I know that many of the folks here echo that sentiment.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Harris. Is there anyone else that would wish to? Yes.
7 West Granite here in Siloam Springs. And I want to say thank you to Mr. Vice Mayor and directors for this time. I'm here to provide 2 public service announcements pertaining to veterans in our area. First of all, I want to let you know that this Saturday at 10 o'clock we will be having a small program at Oak Hill Cemetery. And after that, we will be asking volunteers throughout the community to come and put flags out at all of the veterans' graves at Oak Hill, which is over 900, by the way. And we're going to do that Saturday at 10 o'clock. And then on Saturday, June the 5th at 10 o'clock, we will be retrieving all of those flags. The second announcement I want to share with you is as a president of the KIA Memorial, which is located in our beautiful Memorial Park. On Monday, May the 31st at 11 o'clock, the Siloam Springs Killed in Action Memorial Committee will host a special program at the memorial located, as I say, in the Memorial Park. This will be a celebration of the 5th anniversary of the completion of this memorial. I'm fogging up. The keynote speaker will be Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin, and during this program we will have a special recognition of and honor of the names that are of the military personnel listed on the memorial walls from Siloam Springs that paid the ultimate price for our freedom. All veterans and the general public is invited to attend this meaningful program. I'm encouraging you and asking you as leaders of our city to participate in these programs. It's important for our citizens to know that you care about the veterans as much as we care about the veterans. So just to give you a little idea about Memorial, just in thinking, just remember that in World War I there was 117,000 casualties. World War II, 291,500. Korea, 33,686. And Vietnam, 58,300. So please remember our memorial, please remember veterans, and please be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cavness. Administrator Patterson, can we address how we could either answer some of the questions tonight or when we could possibly do that for
I'd
these
be
people?
happy to address those questions
Thank you.
tonight. So the letter that the host of Airbnbs received is from myself. We have been trying to work with Airbnb since 2019 to get them to enter into a voluntary agreement with the city to collect the city's 2% hotel motel tax. Airbnb has voluntary agreements with 11 Arkansas cities. In March of this year, we were told by Airbnb that their program is still on pause and they are not sure when they might resume it. And if you're interested, that we would suggest ways on how to engage Airbnb host in Siloam Springs area, which is what we chose to do. In 1996, the citizens of Siloam Springs voted in a 2% hotel motel tax. Short-term rentals less than 30 days are required to collect and remit that tax directly to the city. Sales tax is remitted to the state. The state takes 3%. The state's sales tax is 6.5%. The state also has a 2% tourism tax that I wasn't aware of when I originally referenced the total 11.5%. So without that 2% tourism tax, the city sales tax is 2%, county sales tax is 1%, state 6.5%. It's normally what we pay, 9.5% when we go to grocery store or non-groceries. In the lodging side, hotels, motels pay an additional 2% for the 11.5%. But there's also an Arkansas tourism tax for 2%, and that's where you get to 13.5%. Airbnb is collecting and remitting the 11.5% to the state. So they are collecting the 6.5% for the state, the 2% for the state tourism tax, the 1% for the county, and the 2% sales tax for the city. No one is on that Airbnb side of things collecting and remitting the required 2% hotel motel tax. VRBO states in their contract that you as a host are required, at least that's what they're telling us and what they've shown us, that the host is required to collect and remit the tax. So we identified 15 VRBOs and, Airbnbs throughout the city. We wrote 4 different letters depending on where their zoning was. Some in the commercial zone don't need a special use permit approval. Some in a residential zone do. I offered to waive the filing fee for a special use review permit through, I think, for 30 days based on the date of the letter, and I think that is through next Monday, and that we would process those approvals as time allows at the staff level. We would not go back and ask for any remittance of previously owed tax. We were trying to find a start date and move forward. So again, we had been working with VRBO for some time. We had a situation not too long ago where an individual came and bought a building permit and said they were going to build a VRBO, and so at that point the only way to get the approval for that is to go through a special use review because of the zoning. So we felt at that time it was appropriate to address the special use review and the zoning appropriately for everyone that had a VRBO that might not be in a zone where that is allowed by right, a short-term rental. So that's where we are. We would love it if VRBO would agree to collect the tax on behalf of their host, but they have not agreed to that. So if VRBO is telling you that they have a voluntary agreement with the City of Siloam Springs, I would love to see that because we've never seen that agreement. And we're not listed on their website of cities where they're collecting a hotel motel tax. In the discussion with one host, they sent me a copy of their receipt from VRBO, and VRBO lists it as occupancy tax. And based on the calculations, that's when I figured out that they were collecting 11.5%, but it's that additional 2% Arkansas tourism tax that's listed on their website that makes up from 9.5% to 11.5%. But that 2% city hotel motel tax is to be paid directly to the city. Hotels pay it today. It's not any different than the additional 5% liquor tax that certain liquor establishments pay to the city. We didn't want to make it any more onerous on the owners or the host than we had to, so we were trying to do our best to give them time to apply for a special use permit, again, waive that fee within a certain amount of time, and the ones that I've spoken to, I said that we've never had any complaints. I would hope that even though we have to notify members of the public of a special use permit application, that in most of these instances out of the 15, I don't believe there's more than 1 or 2 at the most that are in a true single-family detached residential district. Some of them are located in the close vicinities of downtown, and we would clearly support that continued use as a VRBO. I think it's a great use for the city, but I cannot, as the city administrator, allow the continuation of an operation that doesn't meet the zoning laws, doesn't meet the requirements of collecting the 2% hotel motel tax that other entities in the city are collecting and remitting per the code.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just for clarification, on the special use, the zoning, what kind of requirements? I mean, you said something about a commercial. They don't need, if they're in a commercial area and they don't need the special use. But what, are they going to have sprinkler systems with the fire marshal coming out? What-
I don't believe so. The fire marshal inspection was the first I've heard of that, and I'll be having a conversation with staff. I suspect that they're gonna need a fire extinguisher and maybe a smoke detector to make sure that that's there. Sprinkler systems would come with occupancy, large occupancies. Most of these are, some of these are in some of the downtown apartments that we saw being rented, so I don't think there's any additional requirements there. But from a standpoint of a rental where you're going to advertise it and put it out there for short-term rental, do you have a smoke detector? Do you have a fire extinguisher? I would think that those might be requirements that everyone would want anyway. The special use permit is in zoning. You have uses that are permitted by right. You have uses that are prohibited. And then you have uses that are allowed under special circumstances. And the intent is that the use is allowed, but it might not be a perfect use in every location within that zoning district. So from the standpoint of the ones that I know about, I don't think there will be any issues, any major opposition from the public. And even if there was some opposition, if I was a VRBO host and I was renting out my house, or I had a house that I was renting out, and I've been doing it for the last year, every other weekend, and nobody's complained about it, and all of a sudden somebody complains just because now we're making it public, it's kind of hard to argue that it's really causing a negative impact to the neighborhood. So again, we were trying to make it as as simple as possible, but it's not simple. I've spoken to a few individuals who have called, and we've talked about it. We've had numerous emails, and I've tried to be as upfront and explain it to those who have reached out to me.
Is it going to require them to go in front of a committee to get approval? Or
Special
the city?
use reviews require planning commission and city council approval.
Will they be able to operate until that's done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We were not looking to go back. We were not looking to stop any operations. I divided the 15 into 4 different groups based on zoning and based on requirements. In some cases, all they needed was to get a business license for the business and to start collecting the tax. Other cases, they needed a special use permit and a business license and start collecting and remitting the tax. So there were 3 different classes that I tried to identify based on the various differences in each one.
I think one of the fears I've heard is once you start doing these inspections and stuff, how much is it going to cost me to get it up to the standard of the city when it's been fine, all along?
I will be more than happy to have a conversation with the fire marshal to see what the requirements would be based on at least certain parameters. I don't believe that we're talking fire suppression systems. I don't think that that's appropriate.
Unless it's a mixed use.
Unless it's a mixed use, which they should already have anyway. But I'm not going to go out on a limb today because every situation might be slightly different. But the idea at least is to bring the uses into the zoning and get the required approvals and to start collecting the tax that going forward that is required.
Director Allen.
Philip, do the hotels in Siloam charge the tourism tax, the 2%?
I honestly do not know. They would be required to pay that to the state. They do charge the 2% city hotel motel tax, and they remit that to the city.
But that was a city tax, the hotel motel. The tourism is a state tax.
Yes, sir.
And it's that was passed by the state, I think, for hotels and I think, isn't it? I mean, for tourism, it's to hit up hotels and stuff, I believe.
I haven't done the research, but I assume you're correct.
I think that's why it was instituted was, and as somebody who thinks we're taxed too much already, and I'm not in favor of any, I mean, I'm not one of those people who never saw a tax they didn't like, trust me. But every state I go to, I mean, I've paid upwards of near 20% for various taxes passed by cities and states for staying at a hotel. And the same way Amazon upset the entire retail and states had to pass, internet sales tax laws, these two businesses especially have disrupted the entire hotel industry. And I think you're doing everything you can to get us caught up to date. And I think it's just a normal process, Philip. So I think this is part of life, is you gotta pay a tax. So Airbnb and VRBO, those are the two you were talking about, right? Yeah. And I didn't know it until you were saying they're supposed to have an agreement with the cities that.
Well, there's I just pulled up their website. So Batesville, Bella Vista, Bentonville, Eureka Springs, Fayetteville, Fort Smith, Hot Springs, Jonesboro, Little Rock, North Little Rock, Springdale. They all have A&P taxes. They're advertising and promotion tax. You can do what's called the restaurant tax or the hotel motel tax.
Right.
Typically it's max 3%. You can split it however you want. We only have a 2% hotel motel tax.
But
That
we
tax-
almost had the other one. We looked at that many years ago, so we are lucky to only have the 2%.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion, right? But
Right.
the 2% hotel motel tax to the city of Siloam Springs is dedicated for parks. So that money that is generated goes straight into the general fund. It's strictly for parks. And not long after I got here, when Hot Springs entered into their agreement with VRBO, we started having our discussions. Director Ressler, you had mentioned it one day, and I said that I was getting the agreement from Hot Springs, and we were trying to do that. And we've been getting the runaround. And at some point, it was enough's enough. And as I said, sort of the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back was an applicant coming in to get a building permit to build specifically a VRBO.
Yeah.
And it was, in order to be able to do that, that person needs a special use review. They are going to have to start collecting the tax. And then we started looking and said, we're going to have to treat everybody the same. And in order to do that, I've got to reach out to these existing VRBO owners and notify them, because we would love it if VRBO itself would collect the tax for them and remit it. We can't force VRBO to do that. And the way the city code reads, it is the responsibility of the business who's doing the renting to collect and remit to the city.
Like
And-
any other business.
Correct.
I didn't know that those two businesses had to have an agreement, and it certainly makes sense. But it certainly also, them being fairly new businesses, they're going to give you the runaround, and it eventually catches up, just like the internet sales eventually caught up. So
Yes, Director Ressler.
For clarification, I went to a meeting and came back from Hot Springs, and Philip and I were talking. Whenever I spoke to the mayor of Hot Springs, they're already collecting that tax. We should get they're already collecting it from the people that use their service. We should get that tax to use in our community. And so Philip,
the tourism tax.
no, the 2% that
The
we're supposed
hotel
to be-
motel.
Yeah, and so we should be getting it. We should have been getting it all along when they were collecting it. And so that's what Hot Springs did. They went after it and they collected it for their community, which is a little higher than ours. So that's why we're.
Vice Mayor, I need some clarification too, and I think this young lady here would like to ask a question. Is it okay
I see
if
the
we let
hand.
her ask
We're
a
going to get
question
there in
first?
just a moment.
She can go before me,
Well,
if that's.
Before you
protocol.
go and before you, Administrator Patterson, for further questions or clarification, would these individuals need to come to community development or contact you directly?
Contact me directly, yes. My name and contact information was on every letter.
Okay, thank
More
you.
than happy to meet with them one-on-one, have a phone conversation. I want to try to make it as easy as possible, but the goal is to get everybody, like I said, within the zoning category that needs to be approved and to start collecting the tax.
Okay, thank you. And if you'd like to come to the podium and give us your name and address, and we'll be glad to hear what you have to say. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Melanie Chambers, and I live in Fayetteville. We own the Spring Loft, which is 205 East Main Street. I need some clarification because on our letter, it states that we're supposed to be collecting 11 and a half. So is it 11 and a half or is it 13 and a half? Because our letter says 11 and a half.
And as I stated earlier, ma'am, the 11 and a half is what the total retail sales tax is, plus the city's 2% hotel motel. That was before I saw on Airbnb that they're collecting the 2% state tourism tax. So in the end, it's 13 and a half. 2% comes to the city. The 11 and a half goes to the state.
Okay, because our letter's confusing. It makes it look like when you add all this up that they're supposed to be collecting 11 and a half, which keep in mind, we don't touch any of these funds. Airbnb and VRBO collects them, and they're supposed to submit it to y'all. So in the beginning, we've been operating Airbnbs and VRBO since 2008. So in the beginning, VRBO didn't collect all of that, so we had to set up an ATAP, Mike and I, through the state and do it monthly. So whenever Airbnb come around and they started collecting taxes, then VRBO started to as well, so we didn't have to do this anymore, which was great because we have too many businesses to be reporting monthly and doing stuff anyway. So that's where it's confusing on this letter, because like I said, Airbnb is already collecting 11.5%. So you're saying it's supposed to be a total of 13.5. Okay.
And that clarify. I mean, and I want to clarify it.
But again, it's not in here, so that's why it's so confusing to all of us, because we're looking at our paperwork and our rentals, because it breaks it down what the taxes are. And again, we don't touch any of that. So it's...
And as I stated earlier, and I will go on the record and apologize for any misconfusion, I was not aware of the 2% state tourism tax when I wrote the letter, okay? So I don't stay in a hotel in Siloam Springs. Typically, if I stay in a hotel in the city, it's city business, and I'm, I don't look at it. So when Ms. Harris sent me a copy of a receipt from VRBO, that's when I noticed the 2%, they were collecting an 11.5, and that's when I went, oh, how did they get to that? I went to their website and found that there was an additional 2% state tourism tax. So that 11.5% that VRBO is collecting, they're paying to the state, okay? The state takes the 1%, and after they take their share, they distribute that 1% to the county. They take the city's 2% and distribute it to the city. There is an additional 2% hotel motel tax that is to be collected and distributed by you, the retailer, directly to the city. And so that brings that total to 13.5%.
On our platforms and the stuff, we can't add all of that stuff in there. That's supposed to automatically be added in there, so we're not touching that. We have Airbnbs in Hot Springs, which we don't have to mess with this. We have them in Fayetteville, we don't have to mess with this. So is it something that we need help with y'all to get in touch with Airbnb, which it sounds like that's the problem. VRBO is fine, right?
Well,
or is it?
you made a comment just now that is something that I want to check into. Because when we first talked to VRBO, they said they were not collecting the tax, that their agreement with their host was that the host was required to collect and remit taxes. So, but you said they changed that. When did that change?
3 to 4 years ago.
Okay, so that I've got to look into that one now. So I don't have an answer for you other than if we collectively went to VRBO and got them to agree to collect the additional 2% hotel motel tax for the city and remit it to the city like they're doing with Hot Springs and Fort Smith and Jonesboro and Little Rock, that would resolve this issue. But I don't have the city doesn't have the authority to force VRBO to do that.
So is VRBO the problem or is Airbnb the problem? Where are y'all not getting your funds?
Right now, it sounds like it's both. I was only I was originally aware of Airbnb not collecting the tax, and what I was told originally when we first looked at this was that VRBO requires the host to collect the tax. but you're telling me different, so I've got to check into that now.
They collect for us. We no longer have to file monthly.
Yeah, so I have to now research with VRBO and see if we can get them to start collecting on their end.
And I'm not for sure, and he keeps up with all of this stuff on his end as far as the bookings, and they may already be collecting. I don't.
But I would say, again, I don't want to take up more board's time, but I'm happy to sit down with you individually and try to work this through. But it is a question of the tax needs to be paid, and if VRBO is not going to collect the 2% hotel tax, I am sorry, but it falls to you. And same with
Right.
VRB or with Airbnb.
Or anything.
No, I don't believe you are.
That's charged to our customers. So
Right.
again, we
Yeah.
don't see it.
Right.
That's why when we got this, we were like, man, we don't want to be filing this. That was the whole point of, finally that they're collecting it for us and we don't have to file monthly reports and stuff. So yes, VRBO is supposed to be collecting it as well. Again, we need help then because we thought that they were collecting it. So
They are not.
That's where I owe Philip an apology and you guys, because when I came back from Hot Springs, that's where I was at. I thought they were already collecting it, but
and
it's
I thought-
not.
And this is, again, I know you just apologize, but again, we're like, okay, they're taking out 11.5%. What's the problem? You're getting the money. So
Right,
that's
but
what we
with
have our
that start-
bookings pulled to
Okay,
bring.
I was confused, and thank you for clarifying that.
It's not an easy thing to make crystal clear.
Vice Mayor?
But Philip, since
Okay.
you just learned yourself of the 2% state tax, you'd have been sending out a new letter, I'm sure,
Well,
to
we just
say,
said
hey,
that-
this is something I just learned. It's actually
Yeah,
13.5.
would have been 13.5%, but only 11. I want to make it clear again. Only 11.5% is supposed to go to the state. The other 2% is supposed to come directly to the city.
Is this something we should be having a workshop on, maybe?
I don't believe so, unless
Okay.
you want to write rules and regulations.
Well,
but
I didn't know. It just seems like there's several of them that have questions, and there are some citizens that have questions. So
there's no decision that you have to make. I mean, the code is the code as it stands today. It's just trying to find a way to get everybody in compliance with zoning and find a way to get the 2% hotel motel tax collected and paid.
Vice Mayor?
What are y'all not getting? Because on here it says hotel motel, and then you're saying tourism. So what?
They're actually
That-
collecting the tourism.
That's my
not the
question too.
cities.
It sounds like, okay, I'm an Airbnb customer myself. And I like Airbnbs. And I know I pay a lot of taxes. It seems like a lot of extra fees. I'll look at the main fee and then all of a sudden it's double what that because of all the taxes and cleanup. Okay, that's fine. So whatever is supposed to be collected will fall back on the customer. So you all aren't going to be out money because it's going to fall on whether it's 11% that has to be collected or 13.5%, it falls on the customer. So it sounds like the issue is more between Airbnb and the city/state and VRBO and the city/state. Although I do appreciate what you're saying, if Airbnb is not going to pay it, then somehow it has to get paid to the city, correct? And the total that needs to be paid ultimately by the customer as far as taxes are concerned is 13.5%, and that will cover the local hotel tax, and that will cover the state tourism tax, correct? Okay.
So what you're not receiving is the tourism, because this is designated as hotel.
No.
State's
What
receiving
we're not
tourism.
receiving is the 2% hotel motel tax that is paid directly to the city.
And Airbnb and VRBO are supposed to send that 2% directly to the city. Is that correct? Or do they send it to the state and the state sends it to us?
Supposed to send it to the state, and the state give it to the city.
I don't think that's what Philip said.
I'm going to try to do it again. 6.5% state sales tax. 1% county tax, sales tax. 2% city sales tax. 2% state tourism tax on lodging. And a 2% hotel motel city tax. All of that, 11.5%, not counting the city's hotel motel tax, is paid to the state.
Right.
That's what Airbnb is currently collecting, 11.5%, paying to the state. The 2% city's hotel motel tax, which is not I mean, you can call it a tourism tax, but it's a hotel motel tax, short-term rentals, is what is missing. That final 2% of the 13.5%.
But how is that supposed to get to the city?
Directly from the retailer, directly from, in this case, the host, or from Airbnb.
So
It is
if
paid.
Airbnb or VRBO, it would be easiest for the owners here if VRBO or Airbnb would take care of that.
It is intended to be paid directly to the city,
Okay.
not to the state.
And that's not happening from either VRBO
No.
or Airbnb.
Yep.
Okay, so that needs to be figured out, and it sounds like you've got to call, or you're going to call VRBO, so we need to figure out how to make that work, but I would think the owners would need to be pretty involved in that process too, maybe pushing back to Airbnb and VRBO to get that to happen, right? I mean, is that a fair statement?
I think, again,
If you don't want to collect it yourself and remit to the city, then I think working with Airbnb and VRBO as owners that they're profiting from, if they could help be involved in
Yes.
that process, I would think that would possibly be a good way to start. But then there was another comment I think that Dr. Harris made about once we start instituting these fees, it may not be worth it to try to do this. But my understanding was the special permit fee you're waiving, special use fee you're waiving, and then the business permit.
no fee unless, there's no fee for the business permit unless there's a penalty for not renewing it annually.
Okay.
And there's, with the special use permit, the required notification, putting an ad in the paper, notifying people within 300 feet is about $50. We did not waive that because that's a cost that would be to the city. But the
A
I think,
one-time cost.
excuse me?
One-time cost.
One-time cost. The one-time $100 special use application fee is what we waived for 30 days.
Okay, and that would be a one-time fee
Yes.
as well?
Yeah, once you get the permit for special use approval, then it's valid.
Okay, and then is the business fee an annual fee?
There's no fee for the business license
Okay.
unless you
Unless
fail
you-
to renew.
Okay,
And you're
gotcha.
late in
Okay.
renewing, then there's,
Vice Mayor?
the fee starts growing.
Director Burns.
It sounds like to me that this is not gonna be resolved tonight, and this could go on forever, so I would strongly encourage everybody that's here, over the next 2 weeks, contact the city administrator, and I'm sure the city administrator will give us a report, and I can only say this, that my closing comments at the last meeting were directly this, and what the potential and what a great role that investors and entrepreneurs play in this benefits. We tied it in with JBU events, generations here wanting to come and stay and enjoy Northwest Arkansas. This time, you are not going to get the answer that you are looking for. But the city administrator has an open door, and I can guarantee you that he will get that answer. And I see a doctor can't take no. We've got 2 no's, and this is enjoy it. But I'm just telling you right now, if you will
Can we
work with
extend-
city staff, you'll get the answer.
Can we
This is
extend
due the
the,
20th.
What's the date of the letters? I
Call
thought
them tomorrow morning and get the answer.
I think I had it through the 24th. I'm more than happy if you contact me between now and Monday. I'm more than happy to extend it if you need some more time. I'm not trying to make it any harder, but I will say that of 15, there's been about 3 that have contacted me directly. So since the letter was sent. Again, I'm more than willing to give some additional time. That's not an issue. It's not, the $100 permit fee is not what the city's after. It's to get everybody under zoning appropriately and to begin collecting the sales tax that other hotel, motels, and short-term rentals are paying. So,
But let's make it clear, there's a 2% hotel motel tax for Siloam that is a city tax, and that is in your letter. There's a 2% state tourism tax that is paid directly to the state. That he was not aware of, but it is a state tax. So Airbnb and VRBO supposedly are charging that. Yeah, we can't have people talking directly without.
Then,
Alan?
then they should be willing to do that.
Let's
for
have a,
all.
let's call to order here, please. Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Let's direct those to Administrator Patterson. I believe it's our every intent to work with you. It's not our intent to shut anyone down. We enjoy the VRBO and the Airbnb aspect of our community. And I think Administrator Patterson will do his best to answer those questions, even if it needs to be a face-to-face, not just an email or a phone call. For public input, is there anyone else that has anything they wish to say? That being said, let's go to our consent agenda.
Thank you all.
And thank you all for coming. On our consent agenda, A, we have workshop minutes of May 4th, 2021. Item B, regular meeting minutes of May 4th, 2021. Item C, the dedication of utility easements at 606 and 612 North Madison Street. Item D, we have the resolution 17-21 grant acceptance, ArDOT State Aid Street Program, Holly Street and University Street overlay, $300,000. Item E, resolution 18-21 grant application, ArDOT Transportation Alternative Program, North Mount Olive, Highway 43. Item F, the resolution 19-21 grant application, ArDOT Recreational Trails Program, Dogwood Springs Trail Rehabilitation. Directors, what is your pleasure?
Vice Mayor,
Director Burns.
request that we off the consent agenda pull item C, please.
All right, Director Burns asks that item C be removed from the consent.
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Motion has been made
Second?
and a second. Roll call.
Wiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Or however you do that. Thank you. We had item C pulled, dedication of utility easements, 606 and 612 North Madison Street. Justin Bland.
All right, thank you, Justin Bland, City Engineer.
Excuse me, if we could, before Justin does his full-blown presentation, would it be appropriate to ask Director Burns to, do you have a specific question, or do you want Justin to present the full-blown presentation?
No, I don't know if you have to do anything full-blown. Actually, I think what brought up this interesting topic that we just got done discussing, which I will not mention any further, and I have full faith in city staff to resolve that to the city's benefit. This is that property, one of these property that is there. And the only question I had, I'd sent an email to the city administrator. I'm not sure if he got it. It was wee hours this morning. I was only on my first pot of coffee. I apologize.
Did you not see the response?
No, but that's okay. I've been busy. I apologize, man. I looked for it, but somehow IT doesn't like my Apple products, and I think we know why. And that's in your report, so we won't go there today. I didn't want to shut the pipeline down. So the setbacks on this, and you know, Don Bunker built one of the, he's done great with an infill project early on, and there's other construction crews out there doing the same now. And I understand setback lines, but specifically in the historical district, when I look at these setback lines and I look at pre-existing structures, and I see a setback line going through a pre-existing porch on a historical house, and when I say historical, I've been in the neighborhood going on 18 years this year, and you know, I'm not comprehending that, I guess, and I know the property owner, unfortunately, he's left because they're tied up in, you know, they're running numbers through their heads. And I know it's concern for that. I'll use my own residence as an example, which is down the street from there in Tahlequah. When we did the connectivity piece, I'm well aware of how much property I did not own and how much the city owned. And so when they put that in, I still mow the grass. I treat it as my own. But if I wanted to be a real, you know, stickler, I could just, you know, skip that problem. Trying to think of a good word. You'll have to apologize if I pause for a minute, because I might use strong language that could be abrasive. So I'm just curious on this, and as we encourage these infills, and we just, you know, nothing but positive for these entrepreneurs. Why are the setbacks so deep on these pre-existing homes in a historical district? That's really, I think, my biggest question.
Before Justin answers, let me kind of paraphrase my email back to you, to your question. So in the H1 district, the front setback is 20 feet. In the R2, it's 25. Side setbacks in the H1 single family is 5 feet. It's 8 feet in R2. 15 feet rear, 20 in R2. 12 feet on the side corner lot, and 20 in R2. The issue is that in the zoning code, there is a ability to reduce the H1 front yard setback if zoning code reads something to the effect that H1 front yard setbacks can be reduced if within 10 feet of the front setback of adjacent structures. So if I were to build a brand new home in the H1 district, instead of having a 20-foot front yard setback, if the adjacent structures only had a 10-foot front yard setback, I believe I could build it to a 10-foot front yard setback. But trying to plat that, which is your concern, is what we're doing, because if they tear down those structures, which they're not, but if they were, then we've got a 20-foot setback. So the code creates this problem of how to stipulate that. Now, I would advise that what is before you today is nothing to do with setbacks. It's the dedication of easements. But what I hear you saying and what you've pointed out and what we will take back is a way to note those exceptions to the setback rule on future plats in the H1 district, so that it is very clear that that 20-foot front yard setback could be modified if the adjacent structures, if it's within 10 feet of the adjacent structure setbacks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and for me, it's, you know, I've talked about form-based codes before, where we put design before code and have code work around design. In the historical area, you know, I feel like we, you know, that mindset should be considered to be applied there, because the form is already there, the historical structure. If we recall the code, when we put the connectivity piece, we wanted to take out my half-circle drive, which is historical to that neighborhood, because the home that was there, it was an arson case, but it was there, had that drive. And we had that little go-between, and as a city employee, to keep my address pointed to where the original house was a little, it was interesting, but I'm not saying I won. I'm just saying the historical area is different than any other area. And I understand, as I look at this, I understand where we're on today, but I think it addresses a broader issue, because the water line infrastructure there is extremely poor. And these are things that one day in the future, I know we see things above ground that we're going to have to address. So I see that all in there. I've just asked for consideration because I want these entrepreneurs to come in. I want the long-term rental properties. I think we all want those things. They're great for infill. And I thought this neighborhood would develop faster. I thought people would love to live in the historical district. And now it's starting to gain some momentum. And I would love people to enjoy what I enjoy living in this older part of Siloam. But you know, some of these things are, you know, they're a turnoff. And I just, I look forward to you addressing that, Philip, and taking that into consideration, and that just saved you. And that is all I have. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Vice Mayor? No,
Director Hunt.
I was just gonna make a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Birds,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Appington,
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
And it passes. We're going to head to staff reports. I believe Ms. Owen Hayden has the floor.
Good evening. Give me just a moment. I'm Holland Hayden, Communication Officer, and I'm providing an update for Board Goal C1, which is to provide a broad range of artistic, multicultural, and multi-generational activities and events as part of the city recreational and community events. Part of the analysis portion of this goal was that staff will review and categorize all existing, regularly scheduled, ongoing city-sponsored and non-city-sponsored events. And based on the categorization, staff will identify areas of need for more artistic, multicultural, and multi-generational activities and events. So in summary, staff did gather as many public events as possible from 2019. Obviously, we had to use the 2019 year, including city events, chamber, Main Street, JBU, events held at restaurants, even private venues. Events that were not included were those that weren't really categorized as tourism events. So those were private fundraisers, church events, seminars, events with private sporting organizations as well. Please note that in the spreadsheet, the events could be categorized in more than one category. So for example, a Meet the Artist reception event at the museum was categorized as educational, arts, and community. Additionally, while not included on the spreadsheet, we did categorize events that are accessible or if they were not accessible. And the majority of city events and private sector events are indeed accessible. Some of the successful categories, as you can see, the city had success as a whole with live music, community events, children's specific, and sports and competitive events. Specifically, there were over 100 live music events in 2019, more than 80 community events, more than 50 children's specific events, and more than 40 sporting and community events. In the broader category, multi-generational events and artistic events are prevalent here in Siloam Springs, which is great. There is room for improvement, and that is specifically for live theater, multicultural, and senior programming. These categories have low numbers in the events. Live theater is a bit understandable because it is limited due to venue constraints. It's a challenge sometimes to have live theater without an actual theater venue. Some senior programming is offered through the senior center. The hospital senior programming also was reduced in 2017. JBU does have one, as they called it, land, and one pool, silver sneakers class each day, Monday through Friday. So there is some senior programming here in Siloam Springs, but it's relatively small. And there are, unfortunately, very few multicultural events. While there are many events throughout Northwest Arkansas that focus on culture and diversity, there's not a specific multicultural event here in Siloam Springs. There are possibilities for that. We could look at doing a multicultural event, specifically a Hispanic Heritage Festival, which has been brought up before, something that we could possibly do as well. It would just need to be specifically budgeted for. And I am happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mayor.
You. Director Allen.
Holland, there was years ago, I don't know if there still are, but you might check a heritage banquet / festival for the Hmong people, HMONG, and that might go down on a multicultural listing.
Know who that was through by any chance?
That's what I was gonna, I may have the name, but I don't off the top of my head, so, but.
I'll look into that.
I can look.
Any other questions for Holland?
I thought it was a great report and it was very appreciative, and.
Thank you, Holland, I appreciate it. Yeah, I was really actually amazed at the number of activities that we did have. Although I would agree, the theater, the senior, the multicultural, we are a little bit deficit in that area.
Thank you, Holland.
Thank you.
We'll go with the administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. As you can see, I have a number of items to address tonight, so I will try to go through them as quickly as possible, but there are a few things that I am going to need some feedback on from you as the board. Our April sales tax receipts for the city are up 3.1% for the month. Year to date, we're up just under 9%, 8.9%. For the county, the month was up 11%, and year to date, 14.9%. We're in the process of hiring lifeguards and managers for the Family Aquatic Center. However, we normally hire 35 lifeguards, and currently we have 16. So in order to open the Family Aquatic Center and run it, we do not have sufficient staff to do it under our normal operating hours. So what we're planning on doing is opening it on May the 29th, but follow the same sort of operational hours that we had last year. When you see them there, Thursday and Friday 1 to 7 p.m., Saturday 1 to 7, and Sunday 2 to 6 p.m., and then on August 16th, drop back to Saturday and Sunday until it's closed. That's due to school starting again. If we can hire sufficient lifeguards, then we can broaden those hours, but as it is right now, those are the hours that we're going to be publishing and moving forward. So if you know any young gentlemen and young ladies that are interested in being a lifeguard, we would love for them to put their application in, but you can see we only have about half of what we need to fully operate the aquatic center. This past weekend was the 5A state soccer tournament that was here in town. We had 32 soccer teams playing against each other. There were a number of games on Thursday and Friday that were played at the Sager Creek Soccer Complex, and the Saturday games were played at the high school stadium. Both the boys, Siloam Springs boys and girls soccer teams participated in the tournament. Staff from both Parks and Rec and Community Development were there on hand to assist with the tournament, and it was a huge success. We got good compliments from the Arkansas Activity Association and also school officials on the condition of our field and our complex in general. So I want to thank the staff who worked over the weekend and Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to do that, to make sure that was a great success. That's the second time we've had that tournament here, I believe, and they are interested in coming back in the future. So that was a great success for us, and some of those parents were staying in hotels and VRBOs and Airbnbs, and that's wonderful stuff for the city. We've been having conversations with Benton County about Fisher Ford Kayak Park and gearing up for the summer season. The park, honestly, is overused. It's loved to death. There's been a lot of problems with people illegally parking on Fisher Ford Road. The county has had to send sheriffs out there and potentially haul off illegally parked cars. So the county approached us, and we're gonna partner with the county on some of the cost, but the county is going to install large boulders, as you already see in the parking lot over there, and relocate some of the city boulders and line Fisher Ford for a fairly long distance from the bridge all the way back north. I don't remember if it's 1,000 feet or what it is, but it's a long distance to try to prevent the illegally parked cars on the road. We're going to put a sign in Fisher Ford Kayak Park to state that basically the occupancy limit is 68 vehicles. Those are the number of parking spaces, and we're going to tow any cars parked in the park that are not parked in a designated parking space. There's 68 parking spaces, 3 of those are handicap accessible. So if you've been out there lately, you'll see the erosion that's occurring along the stream bank. We're going to lose trees. Again, the park is a wonderful thing for this city, but it literally is being loved to death, and we've got to try to help it from that standpoint. And it's not, as the county asked, it's not adding more parking. It's trying to just limit some of the use. So we're going to try to do that with parking. The city purchased the utility tri-state building there at Main Street in Lincoln late last year. We gave Utility Tri-State a lease for a few months. We've extended that lease through June the 5th. However, the city next door, West Siloam Springs, is not going to allow Utility Tri-State to move any of their equipment in until they get their certificate of occupancy, which basically means that the building is fully complete and ready to have people in it, 8 hours a day. So they've asked if we would extend the lease for a month to July 5th, and I offered to ask you to give me permission to extend it basically for 2 weeks through 5 p.m. on Monday, June 21st. June 5th is a Saturday. It's kind of hard to make the change with changing keys and everything on the at 5 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. So moving it to a Monday would be more beneficial to staff anyway. So unless there's any objection, I'm going to assume that you are okay with myself taking that forward. On the second page of my report, a very interesting situation. I got a call from Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission, which is what's called a Metropolitan Planning Organization, MPO. They have federal dollars that they get to do transportation enhancements, whether it's vehicular or sidewalks or whatever, bike lanes, whatever. And the same type of organization in Tulsa is called INCOG, the Indian Nation Council of Governments. Tulsa is looking at their transportation, and they have determined that they're one of the few cities in the nation that does not have basically an east-west interstate corridor. So they adopted a resolution last week. You have a copy of that to request the U.S. Congress to designate Highway 412 from Interstate 35 to Interstate 49 as a future interstate. So at some point, Arkansas Highway Department, Northwest Regional Planning Commission are going to have to amend their long-term plans, transportation plans, to put that on their system as a future interstate corridor. And it's likely that you would be asked to adopt a resolution in support of that at some point in the future. So doing a little digging, I found a 2004 ArDOT study that studied a potential bypass around Siloam and West Siloam Springs. And you have a copy of that executive summary that I provided to you that shows a couple of different corridors of where potentially that bypass might occur. I don't think that bypass is going to occur in my lifetime. If it does, I'll be in my 90s. But it is something that has to be thought through and thought about for long-term future. Obviously, there's impacts, both positive and negative. Getting the heavy-duty truck traffic off 412 going through the traffic signals and the lights would be a positive thing, but then there's also always some negative impacts associated with new roadways. But that is something that at least you need to be aware of, and I wanted to bring it to your attention. The electric vehicle charging station is up and running. As of last week, we've had 4 or 5 cars. It's not being used a lot, but I didn't think it would be used, immediately a lot. But there have been cars that have used it. In talking to the administrator of the rebate program at ADEQ, she has approved our application for the full rebate of $9,300. However, upper management at ADEQ still has to approve it, and then it has to be sent off to the Volkswagen Trust Fund for payment. So I'm not expecting that we will receive the $9,300 anytime soon, but I am expecting that we will receive the rebate. In the end, the cost to the city for that charging station, minus the $9,300 rebate, will be just slightly over $2,300. There are 2 programs I would like some feedback on from you from the National League of Cities. Based on the last winter, we had a lot of pipes burst, some inside residents and structures and some outside the service lines. And the National League of Cities has a warranty program that homeowners can buy into with the city's sort of assistant. The city has to become a partner with the National League of Cities to operate the programs. But the National League of Cities would advertise the program to buy insurance for your water service line outside of your house, from your meter to your house, and your sanitary sewer line from your house to the main. And not all sanitary sewer mains are on your property. Sometimes they're across the street, and you're responsible for that line all the way to that main. Now, the issue is, what's the cost to the resident? And generally speaking, it would be about $6 for the water and $7 for the sanitary sewer. The advantage to the program is that if you purchase those insurances, all you would do is call a 1-800 number, and the service line warranty program would take care of the rest. They would hire the contractor, pay the contractor, and you wouldn't have to do anything. Many years ago, after moving here and having a water line that I found out was probably 150 feet long, I reached out to my insurance company, and many insurance companies will have a similar program where you can buy insurance for those service lines that are outside your building. Your homeowner's insurance does not cover those lines outside of your building. My insurance is about $5 a month for both the sewer and water. However, I would end up paying probably a $500 deductible, and I would have to reach out to the contractor, hire them, pay them, and file the claim with my insurance. So there's some advantages to it, but I believe there are also some less expensive insurance opportunities out there. They like to sell the program on the benefit that the city would get a small stipend for everybody that signs up, like 50 cents for everybody that signs up for the water program, 50 cents for everybody that signs up for the sewer. If the city chose to do that program, you could also waive that, which would be my recommendation, and not make any money off of it, so that the insurance is as least the amount possible for those homeowners. So I'd like to hear some comments about that, if you want us to pursue that or not. And then the second program from the National League of Cities is something that's a little bit more interesting, I think, and it's a leak protection program. That's a program where residents could sign up for $1 or $1.50 a month more on their utility bills. And if they had a leak, the leak cost, the expense to that, would be covered. And what happens today, if you have a leak, let's say you have a regular $30 water bill, and all of a sudden you have a leak, and you find out, you get it fixed, and it's a $300 water bill. The city's policy is that if you bring proof that you had the leak repaired, then the city would normally write off 50% of the highest bill during that leak period. You're still responsible for the other 50%. This program would cover that cost completely. So the city wouldn't have to write off a dollar amount, and the resident wouldn't be responsible for the other 50%. That insurance would cover it. But again, it's something that the residents would have to sign on, the city would have to participate, we would have to add that to their utility bills. So I didn't think it appropriate for me to just ignore those programs without having some feedback from the city board. As it relates to COVID, you have some slides there from the Arkansas Center for Health Improvement. Between May 9th and May 16th, we see, based on the information, that the number of daily active COVID cases per 1,000 population in Benton and Washington counties appear to be decreasing, and the number of individuals fully immunized in the northwest region of the state are slightly increased between May the 5th and May the 12th. Today, listening to information coming from AML, and I didn't have a chance to look at the numbers, but I don't know that that would be true today. Based on the information I heard today, there appears to be an uptick in new cases statewide and also a slight uptick in the hospitalizations statewide. So to say that we're trending down, that may be true. That may not be true for the state, because the latest data that I could find as of today on that website was May the 16th and May the 12th. That all being said, the governor's statewide emergency declaration is likely to expire on May the 30th. I believe he has until the 20th to ask the state legislature to extend it. I'm doubtful that will happen. Our citywide declaration of emergency is set to expire at midnight on June the 2nd. Assuming that all happens, and assuming that I don't ask you to extend it on June the 1st, your next board meeting, then come June the 15th, it would likely be that the occupancy limit, or the load, in this boardroom would go back to pre-COVID conditions. I would encourage us to continue to encourage the public and those attending these meetings to wear masks, because I think that's the proper thing to do, but we would not be in a situation without the emergency declaration to arguably limit the occupancy load in this room, if that makes sense. So we'll know more come the meeting in June. And then I have two more things, one of them that's not on the agenda, but I wanted you can see there, I've tried to give you an update on ransom software attacks. Obviously the big one over on the northeast, the Colonial Pipeline, and then the city of Tulsa. Our IT staff are constantly trying to educate city staff on phishing attempts. I think even you've been involved in some of the tests that IT send out to try to fool you to answer emails, but we're doing everything we can to try to prevent those attacks. We've locked down computers. I have to ask IT if I need to download something to a jump drive. I have to get IT to turn on my USB to be able to, they want to know that my jump drive is clean, and I have to get them to turn on the USB port. So we're doing everything we can to prevent those attacks, and I just wanted you to know that our IT staff is, in my opinion, top notch, and I will admit it, they fool me once in a while with some of their phishing attempts, and I'm really trying to look at email addresses from who I get stuff from. So, but I wanted the board to know we're doing everything we can to try to prevent that, but it is something that every city employee and even yourselves have to watch, because we all get various, and the last thing I heard, I didn't write all the names down, there's phishing and pishing, and I don't know what all the other names are of attacks from software and various ways to do that. On April 20th, the board approved a grant application to the FAA for $82,700. We got word from the FAA that they asked us to remove $3,000 from that, which is cost for administrative expenses, and it brings it down to $79,700, but the mayor needs to sign the new application, and I just wanted to update you that we were going to ask her to sign that. The FAA says to add the $3,000 for administrative expenses to the next grant application and not to this one. I don't know why, but it's a easy thing to do, but I wanted to update you that if we come back and say we got $79,700 and you asked why there's $3,000 missing, I wanted to keep you in the loop on that. I appreciate your patience. I know that's one of my longer reports, but I thought all the information was worthwhile and something that you needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator. We'll go to Director's Reports, and I will begin. I'm going to let Carol, Dr. Smiley, finish up with us. I think tonight we got to see an example of how citizens were wanting to gain some answers. I don't think we're able to give complete answers tonight, but we will be working on those, and I do look forward to hearing when we can say we've got that taken care of. I've enjoyed some beautiful weather, and I'm looking forward to the spring and summertime, and if Holland is in here, I'm looking forward to all those events that she's looking to plan for us as well. That's all I have for this evening.
I have two quick things. First of all, Philip, thank you for all the work that has went into that 2% sales tax. I think I've caused you some grief, but I appreciate you looking into it. And
we would have caused it ourselves, but I appreciate you prodding it along.
Yeah, I feel bad that, because my heart is for our community to be able to have Airbnbs and VRBOs and serve our community, but and all the I even had some misunderstanding in that, and so I appreciate all the clarification too. And the second thing I have, a lot of times I bring things to my director's comments are reflected on what people have called me about in the last two or 3 weeks, and sometimes I get a question that I can't answer. Well, a lot of times, and Philip answers a ton of questions, but some of them I think that other people in the public would be interested to know, so I always bring them up here. And one question I was asked is, why is the water and sewer bill on the water and wastewater, why is the wastewater so much higher, and how is that calculated? And you don't have to answer me tonight, but I thought that would be a good Facebook post for people to understand how to read their bill, how is it calculated, why is it done the way it is, and so, and then I appreciate the post on the mulch that went out.
Philip, during your administrator's report, which I enjoyed thoroughly, I searched through my junk mail, and you did respond to me at 9:28, so I wanted to be clear on that, but I still would ask that question tonight because I think that was important, and I was hoping some of the folks that were here would hang out, but I'll contact them after the meeting. I don't mind promoting other cities, and I will tell you there's really awesome things going on in Northwest Arkansas. So if you get a chance, go check out what's happening down in the Rogers area. I'll mention other cities. It's just interesting to see the direction that Northwest Arkansas is going. And I know we have challenges ahead of us. I'm getting positive comments from people that aren't even fans of mine. And I don't know if that's a miracle or just a change of the weather, but either way, it's all good. We're doing good stuff. We're working hard at it. I appreciate the entrepreneurs and the developers, and I will give one challenge out to developers that have yet to come to the table. But if you look nationwide, there is ways to provide economical and affordable housing that we could live with for the next 20, 30, or 50 years. We have to challenge the developers that have a platform, and we're easy because we need the housing, and that's why they're coming here and building. And I would just challenge us as a board. I would challenge city staff, and I would challenge, more importantly, the developers to look around, and we're going to finish up some developments, but we need development that has character, that reflects the money, the workshop that we just went through, right? We want character in the corridor, going the medium down through 412. And we're going to spend some good chunk of change on that. So I would just encourage developers to look around and bring us some character in their development. Thank you.
Director Allen.
Philip, I appreciate you giving us a copy of that 2004 study on the bypass. My last year here as Ward 1 director, that did come up, and it was being bandied about and talked about, and Carol probably remembers. I mean, in 2004, it was a big deal, but I wasn't on the board. I never saw that study. And in 2002, when it was first brought up, the current chamber head at the time wrote an editorial saying, "Oh, bypassing Siloam won't hurt any of those businesses out here on our current bypass." That's what we should be considering is things like that. And we were lucky that they did not go forward with that, and it was because of a new governor, Mike Beebe. Yes, he was a Democrat, and he was a darn good governor. But he nixed that, knowing it would hurt Siloam. I had a question on the VRBO and Airbnb agreements that you had enlightened us on. How long has that been being worked on, and has Jay sent letters to them, or like legal letters or whatever you call it?
No, sir, no legal letters have been sent because we don't have the legal authority to require them to do anything.
Okay.
We took the template from Hot Springs when Hot Springs was one of the last ones, to my knowledge, that got Airbnb to agree. So we took that template and started working with Airbnb in 2019, and here it is 2021, and we've gotten nowhere. They've continued to say, they've continued to basically just push us off, saying our program is on hold, our program is on hold, our program is on hold. And I was willing to maybe continue to try to keep working with them, but as I stated, there was a gentleman who came in and got a building permit for one, and it was like, okay, we can't continue to kick this can down the road. We have to find a date and start saying, going forward, this is what we're going to have to do.
Yeah, when you mentioned that specific use being built for that, it's pretty obvious. Yeah, you can't avoid it anymore. We got to do something.
And I would say part of the other issue, if I can just take another minute, is there's 15 of them. Or I mean, there may be 12. Some have dropped off. Some weren't actual VRBOs. Some might be apartments that the owner of the apartment isn't VRBOing, but the tenant is VRBOing, and I can't figure that one out. But it was interesting in one of my Zoom meetings with the mayors in Northwest Arkansas, as I was beginning to put this letter together and think about it. Not that I want to follow Fayetteville in any way, shape, or form necessarily, but the Fayetteville mayor mentioned that they were adopting rules and regs, and they had 500 VRBOs and Airbnbs that they were having to get in order and get into the right zoning categories and deal with this. And so it just made me think that now is the time. I'm hopefully doing the right thing. Now is the time to try to address this now before we get 100 of them. So.
No, I congratulate you on doing. I think you answered a lot of questions tonight. I thought it was a good. It was something that they needed to hear, and I thought it was educational for us. So you got to get in front of it. So I appreciate you doing it. And you mentioned the IT. I've always thought we have one of the best IT departments around, and I think they do a great job. So I appreciate you educating us on the security issue. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Director Hunt.
Okay. I really appreciated the citizens coming tonight and just expressing their concerns and asking some questions for clarification. We asked them to come to the meetings. We asked them to express whatever's on their mind at these meetings. They came, they did that, and I appreciate that. Got some work to do, it sounds like, and we'll get it figured out. And I think part of the work is them working on their own behalf with VRBO and Airbnb to get that to happen, to get that sales tax to come our way like it should. I don't know that you were asking specifically about the lease to Tri-State and our opinion on that. I support that. I think you did ask for our opinion on the service line and leak warranties. Those would be optional options for our citizens. Yeah, you and I have talked about this because an issue just came up with one of the residents in Ward 1 had a neighbor pay an astronomical amount of money because of an issue with the line, and so he was wanting to know what he should do. So we talked a little bit about the insurance options, and I think this information had come about at the same time. And I think as long as it's an option for our citizens, I'm in favor of.
It would be an option, but it will require the board and the city to sort of be a partner in that program. And so that's my sort of, I mean, that's where you will probably have to adopt a resolution, and the city will have to, National League of Cities will send a letter to all the customers, and in it will say something to the effect that the city of Siloam Springs supports this program or is a partner to this program. That's why it has to come from you rather than.
Right, and I understand that. I'm saying I support your pursuing that and bringing it back to us if you feel like that's something that would be good for the city as well. I'm excited about the Holly and University Streets overlays that were in our consent agenda tonight, and then the dogwood rut repair. And I know some people in Ward 1 will be especially happy for that rut repair too. Director Allen, you you turn north on Dogwood probably from University. It gets a little bumpy there, so I'm really excited about that. And then I'm also excited about the side path that will be going from Don Hill to Carl. I think that really is an important place for that to be with those schools right there. So I'm excited about that. So thank you for your work on that.
Director Sappington.
Vice Mayor. I also want to thank the people that came tonight. It's a learning experience for all of us, and it helps us to understand the concerns, and I appreciate Philip getting it down to where we can understand it. That's always helpful. I want to say it's also click it or ticket. I was talking to Chief Gilbert about that, and just Director Hunt said, well, if you got a new car, it makes the noise anyway, and it bugs you to death. So, yeah, but it's a campaign they're doing, and if you see them out and about, they're doing a hard job, and we need to support them as much as we can. And sometimes I wave at them, and they probably think I'm a crazy old gray-haired lady waving at them. But, I really appreciate what they do. And so I was born on the friendly side of town. So we wave at everybody. And I also wanted to thank the gentleman that came to my door the other day, and he says, you have a water leak. I'm going, what? He goes, yeah. He said, your meter was leaking, but I fixed it for you. And so I thought that was really nice for him to come to the door and let me know that he had fixed my water leak. And that just shows you the kind of courteous people that are employed in our city. So it's just, we live in an amazing town, and it's scary times for some, but like we talked in our CPAC meeting, we're a community that cares for each other, and I think it's wonderful. So I just appreciate all the board of directors that I serve with, that I know you care, and it's a blessing to set up here.
Before you begin, Director Smiley, Administrator Patterson, do you have anything that you need from us before or have you received information that you need, or?
Haven't received any objections to anything. I'll work on those two programs and get a little bit more information and come back at some point.
Okay.
But it sounds like no objections on the lease agreement or any of the other stuff that we talked about.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did not have any objections to the lease or the service programs, but I would say I'm not in favor of charging the additional $50. I don't think that the city should make money on it if we're offering it. I was excited for the soccer tournament that we especially got to use the Sager Creek soccer fields. I thought that was really good. And I'm glad to see that the Memorial Amphitheater is going to be opening. Is it this Saturday that we have, or is it the next Saturday? but it's 2 weeks.
I believe so.
The Cleverleys, is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Also on the 24th, and I believe this is at the library between 5:30 and 7, one of our own citizens has a book. Is it Becky Marietta? And she's going to be reading parts of her book and talking a little bit about that. PD has 2 motorcycles, which I think is great. We'll be seeing them going down the road. And if there is no other business, I move that we adjourn.
Have a second.
Second. Brad can have it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Woo pig.
Chip